This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Hello and welcome to Emergence News on Plains FM. From Christchurch, New Zealand, the city on the plains, the foot of the Southern Alps, by the shining, shining sea. Okay, so I guess the first question is Emergence News. What does it mean? Who's emerging? So Peter, who's emerging? Give us a few ideas.
Yes, well, the Masters of Wisdom are emerging. And at their head is the Christ, the Lord Maitreya. And he is bringing forward up to 40 of these masters that are going to be helping us as a guide to the future.
And that will herald a change on planet Earth.
Indeed it will.
Okay, so Emergence News, we are talking about the emergence of Maitreya the World Teacher. And we also talk a lot about those that have heralded his appearance. And we've talked about Madame Blavatsky, Theosophical Society, we've talked about LSA Bailey, we've talked about Agni Yoga teachings, and we also rely heavily on the writings of a man called Benjamin Creme. So today we're going to do our third session on a book by Benjamin Creme called The Art of Living, Living Within the Laws of Life. Now, we've covered off, as I said, this is the third time we've had a look at this, and basically what Peter and I have done is gone through the book, picked out some interesting stuff, and then discussed it on the radio program. So, Peter, can you tell us what your topic's going to be today?
Well, basically, in looking at leisure, simplicity, and the art of living. Now, the art of living, we've actually got a master's message here in which was already originally published in the Share International magazine. So the master's message is sort of right with it, the key really to our discussion. Excellent.
So this book, The Art of Living, Living Within the Laws of Life, was first edition back in June 2006. And it's written in a very similar format that Benjamin Creme writes, and it's kind of a question and answer format, and a lot of his books are written in that format. And this one, he also takes some ideas expressed by his master and kind of unpicks them for us. So it's written in that question and answer sort of process, and I really like it because I can flick through some pages and pick up a snapshot of an idea that I can read and kind of ruminate on for a while. Is that the same for you, Peter? How do you use this book?
Yeah, I must say it is an easy way of getting to the nuts and bolts of an issue, isn't it?
Yeah. The other thing, too, is that when Benjamin Creme answers questions, he can be quite amusing, and he's a very pragmatic and down-to-earth oracle. So I guess I better mention that Nigel's not here. Do we need to talk about Nigel, Peter, or do we just move on without Nigel?
Well,
who's Nigel? I've forgotten who Nigel is.
You said he was not well.
Yes. Nigel's not well, and so he's not part of us anymore. We still love you, Nigel, if you're out there. Hurry back soon. All right, so Nigel's not here. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've got when we come back from the next break. All right, Peter.
Yes.
I think I'll cover off what I'm going to talk about and then we'll wrap up with you. How does that sound?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, listen, what I've done, and one of the reasons I love Benjamin Creme's books is I'm a lazy student, and nearly always the format of his books is he has an index at the back. And so you can go to the back of the book and look at the index, and I came across Islam and sacrifice. pages 52 to 53, and I came across Jesus, suffering and sacrifice, page 51. And I thought, that sounds really interesting. So that's how I started on my little quest. And that's how I've decided I'm going to talk a little bit about the law of sacrifice from an esoteric perspective as interpreted by Benjamin Creme. So he's asked a question, and once again, it's this question and answer format that he uses so much. He's asked, can he elaborate on the connection between the law of harmlessness and the law of sacrifice? And Benjamin Creme has come back with, we live in an energetic universe. We are all vibrating. The process of living is a process by which the vehicles, physical, astral, mental, gradually change their nature. It's very practical. Now, Benjamin Creme's approach to the spiritual life is very practical, Peter.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
He's got a really, not for me anyway, a really nice way of putting things. He resonates really well. So he goes on to say, if you want to live in a higher sphere, that is, in a sphere in which your mind can be attuned to a higher level of the meaning and purpose of our existence in the world, then you have to have vehicles which allow that to take place. You cannot bring into a mental vehicle that for which it is not yet attuned to grasp. So it has to be vibrating at finer levels. You refine the vehicles. You refine the physical vehicles by all sorts of ways, which people call self-sacrifice. So diet, fasting, exercise. He's a little bit cheeky here. He says they might walk or run, or they might go on a bicycle, even if the bicycle's not moving. They do not get anywhere, but they are still cycling away. They are hot and they're sweaty and they're elevated physically. They are refined. They do this every day for 10 years or half a lifetime, and gradually it refines the physical body. Now, he's talked about diet, vegetarianism. He's talked about exercise as a way of refining the physical vehicle, right?
That's right.
So he then goes on to say, then through life they refine the astral emotional body and then eventually the mental body. Now, Peter, we've talked about points of evolution and initiation. So refining the astral emotional body is
heading towards the Ray 2, to the second initiation.
Second initiation, so about 1.5 onwards.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and also the mental body is third degree? Third degree initiate, right.
Yes.
So basically what he's saying is you raise the vibration of the vehicles by bringing in light. So he goes, each of them go through a process of refinement which allows the vehicles to attract themselves more and more light and more matter of subatomic nature. So human evolution is, we're on the cusp of that horizon between matter and spirit.
That's right.
And our role in evolution is to refine matter into spirit.
That's right. And eventually when we've achieved it, we don't need the matter.
Right. And we can come and go as we please on the planet. We're out of
that's right.
Out of the incarnational cycle, right?
Completely.
Okay, so Creme goes on to say that is where the sacrifice comes in, because that transforms the person. Basically, they are leaving matter behind. He's asked another question, is there a relationship between sacrifice, an individual sacrifice, and the law of sacrifice? And he's very clear on this, and he's a little contentious. He says, I am talking about occult sacrifice, not being asked to carry a bomb and blow yourself up with it, which is not occult sacrifice. But I'm meaning the law of sacrifice in the occult sense, the renunciation of the lower for the higher. He says there is the direct relationship, the personal, individual change that brings about the action of the law of sacrifice. And the change that takes place as a result of that are to do with the law of sacrifice. You change. So that relationship between giving up the lower for the higher, renunciation of the lower for the higher. Peter, where in your life have you given up the lower for the higher?
Well, it's, I guess, a long process, isn't it? You sort of try and do things in the correct way. You embrace the 10 Commandments, I suppose, to start with, don't you?
Right.
Not killing and and not thieving and all these sort of things. And
Start owning your behaviour, start taking responsibility for your behaviour.
Exactly, yes.
For me, it was giving up hedonism. As a young man, I lived a very hedonistic lifestyle.
Okay.
Sex, drugs and rock and roll without the rock and roll. And at one point in my life, in my late 20s, I decided I needed to stop this and change. And that was the start for me. That was the giving up the lower for the higher. Because, Peter, I was having a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah. Right? I was travelling all over the world and just making a fool of myself, really. So Benjamin Creme goes on to say, the law of sacrifice is an action from an occult point of view. You are changing yourself. You are you, but in potential, through action on yourself. So in other words, we talk about personal growth. We talk about change. We talk about diet and exercise, meditation. These things are in the public lexicon at the moment, right?
That's right, yeah.
And so what Benjamin Creme is saying is that you are you, but in potential. Through action on yourself, you invoke the law of sacrifice.
That's right.
Okay, really interesting stuff. We're going to come back. We'll take a break and come back.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org.
All right, welcome back. And Peter, we're talking about the changes that we've made in our lives to make us better people, giving up the lower for the higher. Benjamin Creme is talking about the law of sacrifice. And one of the things that really interested me about this is that he's asked about the idea of sacrifice within religion. And this is how I got onto this topic, really. He says there is a long-standing religious tradition, especially in the devotional religions like Christianity and Islam, which equates sacrifice with the end of suffering, but entailing suffering. That entails suffering as the ultimate sacrifice. In other words, the more we suffer, the more we sacrifice. Benjamin Creme goes on to say, underlying the devotional attitudes of Christianity and Islam is the idea of sacrifice. They mistake the role of sacrifice, of the law of sacrifice, but they've got an inkling of it. And it is seen as a method par excellence of overcoming the ego. And I found that really interesting because I'm a religious studies major at university, and I've never actually equated that we are using sacrifice to overcome the ego. And he's saying that the Christian church has recognised this. I found that really interesting. So he goes on to say they recognise that the ego must be overcome. Yes, we all agree on that. And to go to beyond the ego and to become totally detached. So he's using the Eastern concept of detachment and applying it to Christian thought.
Great.
Once again, interesting take. The way to do it, he goes on to tell us, is by making oneself suffer, which has two roles in the Christian tradition. One is coming close to Jesus because he suffered so much from the flails of the scourges which were used on him before the crucifixion. By doing the same thing on oneself, the idea is one recognises, appreciates and comes close to, if the mind and heart are aligned in this, the suffering of Jesus. There is no doubt that that can be a mode of procedure for some religious people. He goes on to say that that's actually sixth ray, the sixth ray operating through Christianity and Islam, which are both sixth ray religions. Very interesting connection that it is as if they have recognised the esoteric meaning of the sixth ray instinctively, intuitively through the sacrifice of Jesus. He does say that a lot of sacrifice is useless. He does say that a cult sacrifice is about giving up the lower for the higher in that battle with the ego. It's not about punishing yourself. So he tells us that punishment is an ego trait and that sacrificing the lower for the higher is that intuition driving us forward, bringing us to that point of realization. Okay, so really interesting take, a couple of pages out of the book, The Art of Living, Living Within the Laws of Life. If you have an interest in religion, if you have an interest in the religions of Christianity and Islam, Benjamin Creme's got some really interesting commentary on sacrifice within that religious thought. Okay, Peter, we'll come back with you shortly. Okay, Peter.
Thank you, John. Yes, well, I'm going to cover leisure, simplicity, and the art of living. Leisure is not doing nothing, but doing what you would like to do, what rests the body, mind, the heart, or which allows you the time to do for yourself something over and above what you do for the community. Most of our time is given to the community, working 5 days a week. Maybe that is too much. What is so sacred about 40 hours a week? Often I've thought of a 4-day working week, and I see some companies are doing this now.
Yes, been some good research on that, Peter, as well.
Idea.
Yep.
Leisure, of course, could be the busy time of the week. But if that's what our heart is in, then it is healthy. It does upset me to hear of people doing 12 hours a day for a pittance, and so it should. But sometimes change is slow, that we should be doing what we can to right this wrong. Leisure is having time to do what you want to do, to be creative, to love what you are doing. As a builder, I've often done 40 hours during the week, then worked all weekend on a house for our family, and not felt the least bit tired, because it was what I wanted to do. It becomes a joy rather than a trial. Today, when people are at work, it is almost like a parallel existence, a second life, which they have constructed in order to earn a living. In the society, corrupt as it is, we have to be here. Opting out of it will not do us any good. We are in incarnation at this time because of what's happening at this time. We have chosen to be here. We have the task of making a new and better world. Leisure is about being creative. We can be creative in every aspect of our life, not just about art. Creativity exists in every son of God, a God-given quality. Creative activity is the nature of life lived under the laws of life. Doesn't matter what vocation you have, simplicity has a big role to play in the future. Our lives have become overly complex and stressful. We don't need to go back to the vanilla-only ice cream, as I remember as a child. Then came chocolate chip. Do you remember that? That was the second flavour we had.
It's like Ford. Henry Ford made cars. You could have any colour you liked, but black.
But as Benjamin Krem says, we don't need 50-plus varieties.
Yeah, right.
You know, he talks about overproduction of all sorts of artefacts filling the warehouses of the world, the duplication of everything. Simplicity is really using the minimum you need for the fullest life. I remember talking to a young lady about someone I knew with 3 bikes. Then she told me she had 15. I was absolutely speechless.
That's interesting stuff about that 4-day working week, Peter.
Yeah.
Iceland, a year or two ago, as a nation,
decided to do that.
What they did is they approached private and public entities and put a model in place where they work 4-day weeks.
Right.
Sick leave went down, productivity went up, happiness went up, and it worked in every way that it could be measured.
Yeah.
And parenting, all of that stuff became easier to do.
Yeah.
And they also allowed their workforce to choose when they worked the 4 days.
Yeah.
So whether you worked 4 in a row and then took the 5th one off, or whether you worked 2 and had 2 and so on and so on. But yeah, very, very positive. People respond well to leisure.
Yes, they do. I think it's very important. So now we're going to read about the art of living from Benjamin Krem's book, A Master Speaks, and these were articles that were put in the Share International. Before long, a great change will take place in our approach to life. Out of the chaos of the present time will emerge a new understanding of the meaning underlying our existence, and every effort will be made to express our awareness of that meaning in our daily lives. This will bring about a complete transformation of society. A new livingness will characterize our relationships and institutions. A new freedom and sense of joy will replace the present fear Above all else, mankind will come to realize that living is an art, based on certain laws, requiring the function of the intuition for correct expression. Harmlessness is the key to the new beauty in relationship which will emerge. A new sense of responsibility for actions and thoughts will guide each one in every situation. An understanding of the law of cause and effect will transform men's approach to each other. A new and more harmonious interaction between men and nations will supplant the present competition and distrust. Gradually, mankind will learn the art of living, bringing to each moment the experience of the new. No longer will men live in fear of the future and of each other. No longer will millions starve or carry the burden of labour for their brothers. Each one has a part to play in the complex pattern being woven by humanity. Each contribution is uniquely valuable and necessary to the whole. However dim as yet the spark, there is no one in whom the fire of creativity cannot be lit. The art of living is the art of giving expression to that creative fire, and so revealing the nature of men as potential gods. It is essential that all men share in this experience and learn the art of living. Until now, a truly creative life has been the privilege of the few. In this coming time, the untapped creativity of millions will add a new lustre to the achievement of man. Emerging from the darkness of exploitation and fear in true and correct relationship, each man will find within himself the purpose and the joy of living. The presence of the Christ and the Masters will speed this process, inspiring humanity to saner and safer methods of advance. A new simplicity will distinguish the coming civilization under the guidance of the knowers of God. Already there is a growing sense that all is not well in man's estate. More and more men are becoming aware of the limitations of their lives and search for something better. They question the modes and structures which inhibit participation in the fullness of life and long for meaning and purpose in all that they do. Shortly, newer energies will enter our lives and inspire men to creative action. A new and harmonious stimulus will be given to art and the art of living. A beauty not seen before will transform the ways of men and illumine for all time the nature of God. Man stands now ready for revelation, his heart and mind poised and turned to the future. He awaits the glory which by readiness he has invoked.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.